Hi, my name's Toby Russell, and I'm from Lyons, Colorado. Lyons, if you don't know, is a small town of 2,000 just north of Boulder. It's got an amazing music and art scene. It's got fantastic restaurants and distilleries. Can't be a bad thing. And it's got a vibrant and active community. My organization I've got one caveat actually, is that it is limited in land size, so you can't all move there. My organization, Natural Capitalism Solutions, which is a non-profit that focuses on sustainable education and implementation, gained the contract to create Lyons Sustainability Action Plan in August 2013. And we looked at all sorts of areas and thought about how we can reduce the town's environmental impact. We looked at how we could improve the economic viability of the town while improving the quality of life. And when we engage with a client, we often use pictures to begin to tell the story of what some of the big global challenges we're facing look like. So for example, around climate change, these are some pictures about extreme weather, rising sea level, natural disasters. And pictures help people relate to a subject that they have no other way of relating to and can be very effective. What I didn't expect was a month later that I'd be using a picture of my own home. So my flood story, my disaster story, starts at Denver International Airport. I'd been away for 2 weeks helping my parents move to France. And I got on the bus to go to Boulder and heard a couple of students speaking in front of me. And they were kind of murmuring, saying, there's a flood happening in Boulder. And one of them turned around to the other and said, I just heard that my apartment flooded. I hope my roommates bothered to move some of my stuff. And I didn't think much more of it, but I saw that the rain was falling. I got to Boulder. It was torrential. Moving from the bus to my car, water came up to my ankles. I got wetter than I've ever been. I'm from Scotland. I know what wet's all about. I drove my car from Boulder up to Lyons, which normally takes about 20 minutes. It took me an hour and a half. And I got to the bridge just outside my house, and the firefighters were putting up a do not enter, a barrier in front of it, saying, we're just doing this as a precaution. I was the last person through. I was the last person to make it into my neighborhood. And I got home, and I hugged my wife, and started getting ready for bed. And I want to step back from that for just a second, because when I live as close to the river as I do, going to bed is probably a really stupid thing to do. But as I said, I am from Scotland and I'm used to water, but I'm used to water that rises slowly. I'm used to water that is consistent, and where I'm from, there's a marsh and it floods every 2 months. No, not every 2 months, every 2 years. But it comes up slowly, and it will get you damp. But it won't hurtle down canyons driven by the velocity of the Rocky Mountains and destroy everything in its path. Half an hour after getting home, the sirens went off. I tried to leave. The road was already inaccessible. We drive probably 2 blocks away to a parking lot and sat in the rain for 2 hours trying to work out what to do before 10 families all gathered in one friend's home who lived slightly further away from the river. And I can't tell you all how grateful I am that I was on the island with my family, with my friends, that I was able to support them, that we were able to do some incredible things. We built barricades with wood and poles to help people's houses not flood. We scrummaged for food in every refrigerator and cooked it on grills that had propane in it. We made sure that we were stocked up in alcohol to keep our spirits high. And we had a good time, but it wasn't all, and it was powerful, but it was hard in that there was no communication with the outside world. There were no utilities. And every 3 hours, there was the fear that the dam above us would break. 3 days later, we got off that island, and we weren't hit that badly. We were lucky. We lost a lot of personal belongings in our neighborhood, in basements and in garages. But the town took a larger hit than we did. Lyons had 20% of its housing stock damaged or destroyed. The 2,000 residents that lived there had to evacuate for over 2 months because there were no utilities. The two main parks in the town were absolutely desolated. They look like moonscape now. Last week there were volunteers in the park that found a grand piano buried under the rocks. The businesses were out of business for 3 months during the peak season in a tourist town. And as we were dealing with that grief and we were thinking about when we'd get back into our town, the news of the typhoon in the Philippines hit. And having just gone through a disaster and understanding what that feels like, looking at some of the statistics around that just made me break down and absolutely cry. You got 6,000 people dead, 2,000 people still not found. The place is still in disarray. People are living in temporary shelter from now until who knows when. And what is it about our society when that hits the news cycle for 2 to 3 weeks and then disappears? Are we getting so used to disasters that they are just a blip on a news cycle? It may be that we have to get more used to disasters. A lot of the experts out there believe that we are in the forefront of disasters, that the era of storms are upon us. This is a graph of the natural disasters in the last 100 years. You don't need to be a statistician to understand which trend is happening here. These are natural disasters declared by the last 10 presidents. Similar, the growth is pretty stark. And with growth comes cost, not just the cost of human life, but also the cost financially. And we can't separate these disasters completely from some of the climate challenges that we're facing. 9 out of the last 10 disasters are climate related, the most expensive disasters in US history. And when we look at recovering to make things back the way we were. We're very attached to our things, our homes. And what I'm proposing is that we need to look and find ways to recover that are resilient, that we can rebuild, that will leave communities less vulnerable to the next disaster, that will leave economies stronger than they were before the disaster hit, that will support the people that have gone through the disaster, and that also will incorporate innovative, sustainable solutions that will help mitigate some of the challenges that are creating the disasters in the first place. I'm going to go through a couple of examples of what that looks like, and these aren't particularly all new. Soldiers Grove in Wisconsin in 1978 was hit by the largest flood in their history. And they went through a huge amount of discussions because their downtown was destroyed. A lot of the businesses would have to go through a huge rebuilding process. And they went through a hard discussion and eventually made a decision to move that town onto higher ground. And while they were moving that town onto higher ground, they decided to incorporate efficiency and solar and created the first solar city in America. And when a larger flood in 2008 hit, none of the buildings were affected. Greensburg, Kansas is kind of like the poster child of sustainable recovery. It was hit by a tornado in May of 2007 that had winds of over 200 miles an hour, 11 fatalities, 95% of the town destroyed. It was the first major disaster after Katrina, and there were a lot of people focusing on that disaster trying to make it right, making sure that they recovered in the right way, and they did a phenomenal job of that. They've got a manual of things that they've done that is this thick. Things like incorporating community wind farms, looking at efficiency built in their buildings. Every public building had to be LEED certified. Looking at alternative transportation. And in Lyons, we're trying to do something similar. And we've got a lot going for us in Lyons. We're about 6 months through the disaster, and we've done all the emergency recovery stuff, and we're moving into long-term recovery. And the community spirit in Lyons is hugely strong, as I mentioned before. So we had a planning process over the last 3 months that 500 residents from Lyons participated in to create a recovery plan. That's a quarter of the town's population involved in a planning process. It's mind-blowing. And they came up with over 70 actions of things that they could do that would make the town better than it was when the disaster hit if they were implemented. Things like resilient utilities that can better withstand the next disaster, and solar hubs on those islands where people were trapped so people could charge their phones and communicate with the outside world. Things like resilient streams where the beds involve ecology that not only support natural ecosystems, but dampen the flood when it hits next time. Things like buildings using local and renewable materials to build, and things like increasing the human services to actually support the people that were hardest hit in the flood. Floods aren't just about destroying places, they can have huge effects on the people that go through them. And it's not limited to towns in the States. Every major natural disaster has some hope, some future that looks brighter because of it. In Haiti, there's been a lot of work in economic development. So there's industries that have grown that were never there before, like fair trade coffee. In Japan, after the tsunami there, they're building the shorefronts using ecology that next time the surge hits, it won't hit as hard. Hurricane Mitch in Central America, what they found there was really interesting, that the farms that were more sustainable agriculture was more resilient to the hurricane than conventional farming. So, in the recovery process, they're doing more sustainable farming. And after the 2010 flooding in Pakistan, they decided rather than rebuilding the huts on the ground, they would use bamboo stilts to build the homes, and so that the impact of the next flood would be less. We have all the solutions we need at our fingertips. We just need the courage to do them. So having been in a unique position of being at the heart of a disaster, of also helping in the recovery process, and being in an organization that helps organizations and communities plan for disaster, if we embrace innovative, sustainable solutions that are outside the box, we can mitigate some of the impact of the next disaster that will hit. And I feel very strongly that if you all embrace sustainability in your lives, in your communities, in your organizations, that you can find the future that you're looking for. You can create the future that you want to live in. And you can find your hill like in Soldiers Grove, Wisconsin. You can find better economic prosperity like in Haiti. You can find your innovation, your spark for innovation like in Greensburg, Kansas. And you can find your community spirit like in Lyons, Colorado. And together, we can create sustainable solutions that will help stop global warming and reduce the amount of disasters that will happen in our future. Thank you.